Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Russ Reed, and I'm the Executive Director of the National Center for the Biotechnology Workforce, but also I'm the co-PI of what we call InnovATE Bio, which is the National Center for Biotechnology Education based out of Austin, Texas. And it's a grant that is actually led by Linnea Fletcher out of Austin Community College. So I'm really excited today because I have three former fellows of the Biosciences Industry Fellows Program, and I want to introduce them to you right now. I have Dr. Tandika Boko.
Hi.
I have Patty Alfing.
Hi.
And I have Dr. Todd Smith. And of course, we have our wonderful media technician, Sean Killebrew, online today, helping us out, making sure that this all works out well. So I want to just say hi to everybody. And Patty, you're outdoors. That's kind of cool.
It's a beautiful day.
I thought it was a fake background, actually. No. Todd's in Seattle, and Tandika's in Winston-Salem as well. So I just want to ask you guys, what year did you take the BIFP? Tandika, I'll start with yourself.
Sure. So I actually saw it the first cohort when it was introduced. And I got excited then. I just couldn't do it the first summer. So I said I'm definitely going to make time to plan to be able to do it during the second summer. And what really interested me in the program was the ability for participants to actually get hands-on experience in the bioscience industry. Um, I hadn't had that hands-on experience being in education, since I was really in school. Um, so I wanted to be able to have that, and I also wanted to be able to experience current industry practices and hear from people who are working at the multitude of different bioscience industry companies that we visited and be able to take that information back to my students. For example, I was able to interview one of them, and I just posed the question, what advice would they give to my students as they're going through classes, taking the theory, and what would they how would they apply it to some of the job offerings that are available in the industry? And it's a video that I use still to this day, and students love it. The networking also from the people we met at the different industries was just fantastic. I communicate with some of them still till today. I put my students in connection with them as well. So yeah, those two, the hands-on experience and the networking, they've lasted.
Tandika, you jumped ahead into my questions, which is
Oh,
great. So I'm really
okay.
excited that you did that. I wanted to just take it back a bit and just remind us your background. I know you're a medical doctor.
Mm-hmm. Sure, sure. So I have a medical doctorate, but I have been in medical education for the majority of my career. I pivoted there for my family, and I have thoroughly enjoyed it ever since. And I've always been a teacher in a way. Even with patient education, I was constantly teaching my patients how to know their own body, how to be their own advocates, and how to prevent illness. So I've always loved that aspect. And then right now, I'm the North Carolina STEM Alliance advisor, navigator at Foresight Tech. And I work with a group of students who are a part of a grant that's funded by the National Science Foundation, as well as LSAMP, the Lewis Stokes um, Alliance for Minority Participation, supports this grant as well. And our major goal, well, we're in alliance with two other schools, Central Piedmont Community College and Guilford Technical Community College. And the major goal of this program or this grant is to identify students who are currently in their Associate of Science or Associate of Engineering degrees at Forsyth Tech and help them to graduate and then transfer on to a four-year college or university, continuing on in a STEM field of study, and ultimately either to graduate school, continuing in STEM, and of course to a career. So we follow them. We're new to the program, but we will be following them all the way to their career and
That's great.
supporting them. Mhm.
Yeah, and I've had the pleasure to interview three of your fellows, and I really enjoyed that interview. So thank you for letting me do that. And also, I think I'm on your board of advisors, so I'm really,
Absolutely.
yeah. Well, thank you, Tandika. That's great. Patty Elfing, Patty, you took the BIF, and you have actually had a history with the Fellows Program now, going way back. But you were one of the first classes too. What kinds of ideas do you want to relate back to us about your experience? And also, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
And then I've been fortunate to help Russ with the Biff pretty much every year since then. So I've gotten to know several people. My background, I went to graduate school for molecular genetics and microbiology, and I have a master's in that. And I did laboratory research for a year and clinical research for a couple of years, and then I settled into teaching. And I've been teaching for a while. My first job teaching was actually teaching a lot of biotech students over at Forsyth Tech. And then I got married and moved, and I wasn't teaching at Forsyth Tech anymore. And I've taught just all sorts of different things, general biology, A&P, genetics, just all sorts of things throughout my career. But once I had left Forsyth and wasn't teaching the biotech students anymore, I was really wanting to get a little bit more kind of updated information on the biotech side of things, because it was what had always interested me. And so that was one of the reasons why I was really interested in the Bifp program, so that I could go get some of that information. I don't have biotech students now, but I do relate a lot of the information that I learned from the program, or some of the locations we went to, some of the different types of medications or treatments that they talk about with the industry visits that we did with Biogen, or maybe with where we did the research visits with the regenerative medicine. And talking to my students about some of the things that are kind of coming down the pipeline that they can expect to see probably as medical treatments within their lifetimes and within their careers. So that was one of the big purposes that I had for going into it. And one of the side things that kind of happened, one, I've been able to work with Russ a lot, and Russ is a great person to work with, and he's been able to expand my horizons and challenge me in some ways that maybe I wouldn't necessarily have challenged myself. But I also found that it gave me a chance to talk to some other educators that were not just in the state of North Carolina. And I think that's one of the things that we don't get to do a lot of times. We kind of get stuck in our own community college group, and we don't, you do good to talk to people who are in your own state sometimes about what they're doing. But when you're talking to the people in, California, Texas, Washington, wherever, it makes a big difference in kind of your perspective on what things are going to be coming down the pipeline, or going to be what's important in the future. And then it also kind of gives you a different perspective and gives you some ideas of, okay, well, maybe I could do this differently, or, maybe I could, one of the things that some of them had been doing that I had never done was teach microbiology all online. And it kind of made me go, oh, wow. Yeah, I've always felt like you had to have some hands-on experience, and there are still ways you can do that even with teaching it all online. And that's been some of the things I've been fortunate enough to discuss with some of the colleagues I've met at these fellowships.
Todd, you and I have known each other for a long time.
Yes.
And, you came to the BIFP first introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, because you have a very dynamic and unique background. But at the same time, you came to the BIFP and you took it, and you were with us for 3 weeks, and you made the most of it. So I'm just curious what you picked up out of it, but I'd like to know more, and so that other people can know more about you. So give us a little bit of an intro.
Well, that's great. I made the most of it. So, they say chance favors a prepared mind. So how did I prepare my mind? So, one thing, unlike my colleagues on Bifp, I'm not an instructor in the same way that my compadres are instructors. So I do a lot of mentoring, but it's entrepreneurship mentoring. So I work with a lot of people who are starting companies and things like that. And the way I got into that was by starting a company. So I had a company. I'll kind of work backwards a little bit. Before I got involved with the National Center and in this group, I had a business in bioinformatics that we supported DNA sequencing and genetic analysis and help people from the laboratory to the data analysis. So we worked through a lot of pharma companies, government companies, university core labs. It was really a great experience and a great opportunity. PerkinElmer acquired the company in 2011, and so I stayed on for a few years and got some experience in a large corporation. And before that, I was doing my postdoc, and that was in Leroy Hood's lab, which was an entrepreneurial lab. I mean, so for those who are familiar, he's really has credit for founding the 4 pillars of modern science around data collection and producing molecules. So the DNA sequencer, the DNA synthesizer, the protein sequencer, and the protein synthesizer. So when we think about modern synthetic biology today, it's our ability to read and write DNA is driving this industry into really interesting places. And the other thing that kind of prepared my mind was I got my PhD in medicinal chemistry. And that was at the University of Washington. And one of the really great features of the program there was they connected the students to industry. It was a rare graduate program that would have students who would go and do a sabbatical, an internship at, a pharmaceutical company. I didn't take advantage of that because I had already started my family, so I didn't want to leave the kids and Sandy with the kids, and but it that really prepared me for a career in biotech, and and I did my PhD in medicinal chemistry, but before that I was a technician in industry. So I worked in the biotech industry out of my my undergrad experience, and that's because in 1980, when I was thinking, what do I want to do, Genentech had started, and I read this article on them, and I went, well, that's what I want to do. So I ended up in Seattle from Minnesota and worked at Genetic Systems, which was one of the early biotechs, and so that was a very exciting experience. So how did I take advantage of the program? Well, as you said, you should come out to Bifp. You're going to learn a lot. And I was like, well, yeah, 3 weeks in North Carolina. What could be bad about that? And North Carolina is also, I'll say from my experience, is unique in terms of its biotech. And I didn't really know why. You got to show up and find out, meet the people, see what's going on. But it really is. And the things we did, going, the first week visiting schools, right? So, a few community colleges, and then I'm drawing a blank on the one that does the master's programs, that has John Snow away.
NC State?
Yeah, NC State is where we ended up to do the
Central?
Yeah.
Bright?
Yeah. But I mean, really aligned with what industry needs from the community. So, as in North Carolina, a lot of manufacturing settled there. And so there's, it's very cohesive, and there's a lot of focus, from the state level to the trade associations on the industry. And I think it serves the students very well, so that's a really unique thing. And, in the course itself, I did learn a lot. So, 30 years of biotech, helping entrepreneurs, what could I learn? Well, you can always learn. And, and it was, the hands-on that was just fun. And as you know, I'm a photographer as well. And so I was able to collect a lot of really great pictures that we use in the websites for our biotech community. And then also the company visits, being able to talk to people and hear their perspective. But, you know, the biggest was being in that van. You know, nobody talks about the van. Patty was helping. She was driving the van a lot. But, you know, you really, you know, there's a lot of ideas going on and people are talking about things. And I think, you know, a lot of my colleagues are, you know, now developing new ATE programs and grant proposals, you know, based on just some of those conversations. So, you know, it's just that, you know, that community. I went to summer camp as a kid, so, you know, I'm just prepared for these kinds of things. You know, the week in the dorm, I mean, it's just like camp. So it was great.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Todd, for that. And we appreciate that perspective because you come from having been a CEO of your own company.
Yes.
And I actually, you know, had the pleasure to visit you at your company when you were in full action there. So it's, you know, it's you're providing a different perspective than Tendika and Patty. So really appreciate it. Okay, so let me ask you a question then. And I think I heard a little bit from Tendika, but maybe we can do a little bit more on this, which was, you know, this has been a while since you've taken this, but some things resonate with you. What have you actually implemented in your current jobs? And Patty, you might have touched on this too, but if you have anything more to add, please do. In terms of, you know, how are you using the experience on a day-to-day basis, and just, you know, highlights.
Okay. Well, I too took a lot of pictures. I made a lot of videos and I wrote a lot. I actually, in my presentation that's published on, I forget which site it's published on, Russ, but you know, our PowerPoint presentations.
Yeah.
I took a lot of those PowerPoints and I incorporated them into the different chapter content information for my students. So they were my hook. Um, and I think just about every anatomy and physiology, internal body system chapter that we had, I had a photo or a story or a video that would fit each area of the body. So that's how I used, in a practical sense, the information that I got. And I told the students where the information came from, and I gave them more detail, particularly if they were curious on that particular site experience. For example, we did a DNA lab where we isolated the bitter taste. Help me, Patty, to remember. I
It was
think
pepper,
that's what it
wasn't it?
was.
Wasn't it pepper? Was it a pepper?
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Mhm.
yes.
No, the DNA for the taste, the bitter taste
Oh, the
allele.
bitter taste.
The
Okay.
bitter exactly, the bitter taste allele. So we talked a little bit about that in our genetics chapter in anatomy and physiology, but I had a picture that this was the hook, a picture of one of the fellows when she tasted it. And I said, and she was like, you know, and I the question was, so what alleles would this person have had, you know? So we were talking about dominant, recessive, you know, etc. And so the students predicted her alleles correctly.
Excellent. Okay,
So
thank you.
that's how we use those.
That's great. Patty, do you use any of your?
So there were a couple of things that I have already kind of talked about where I use it in the classroom. But one of the things that I did after I did the fellowship was I was so excited about science again and so excited about working with my colleagues on things that I actually started a lecture program at our college where different faculty would speak on different things. And it varied. You know, one was preparing for end-of-life decisions. One was someone who was an expert in growing orchids, and they presented that information. It was a lot of variety in there, but it was really good to just kind of be able to have that communication and interact with my colleagues and find out more about them and what they know. That led me into more of doing things with Faculty Senate, and then I became the Faculty Senate president. So, but I was able to, with the fellowship, get a little bit more kind of ideas from other people and encouragement to do some different things than what I had just been doing of just teaching. So it was something that I was able to do and expand into something a little bit different.
Thank you, Patty, and thank you, Tandika. And Tandika, if I could I make the inference that you might have used the BIFP experience to jump into NC STEM?
It's certainly helped. I didn't know about NC STEM at that time. I think that knowing the diversity of the job experience or job opportunities in the bioscience industry certainly helped me with NC STEM, because our ultimate goal is to get students into these careers.
Mhm.
So absolutely, absolutely. Mhm.
Thank you. Todd, you're a business guy, business science guy. We talked about the 3 weeks, and you were a great participant. Did you take anything home? I mean, have you applied anything? I'm just curious.
I always like to think of yes, in both conscious and unconscious ways, right? So the conscious activities, I've written about the experience. So there's as our role in the National Center and our work at Digital World Biology is about communicating science and science education. And so I've written, like the hello world of biomanufacturing, is GFP, right? And so it was a blog about the experience with doing the purification. And there's been other kinds of themes like that. It certainly, prepared me for, some of the other blogs and things we've put on the website. Companies I didn't know about are now on the website on Biotech Careers. That's the other website we do. And then, as when I'm not working on the community college projects in the National Center, I'm also consulting. So I do entrepreneur mentorship, where I help people who are starting companies think about their ideas, their customer discovery. So there's just my network group, so I can help them in that way. And then I also will consult in terms of doing market assessments, things like that. And so you just need to know as much as you can about the industry in global ways. And so this helped. And then the third is I do SBIR grant reviews, and for good or bad, I can tell good proposals from bad proposals, and a lot of times, like on an SBIR, which is a business grant, is they struggle in their commercialization plans, and that's kind of so those are it just helped that whole that whole theme and just upped my game a bit, right?
Perfect. Thank you. I have a final question for the three of you, and that is, if there were to be a different experience beyond the BIFP, what kind of experience would you want to have, Tandika? And then that'll go to Patty and go to Todd.
When you say beyond BIFP,
Yeah, like in other words, if you had an opportunity to take another program that was NSF driven, that could take you to another level, what kind of program do you think you would like to take?
I would actually like to do something alongside a student, to have that kind of like a mentor-mentee relationship, but we are involved in the same activities together. I think that would help faculty and students to be able to understand each other better in terms of a learning standpoint.
Interesting.
So that would be interesting and I think beneficial as well.
Okay, thank you. Patty?
Um, there's always things I want to learn. So all the different topics that are out there, some of the ones that I probably am a little more interested in after I did the Bifp and things were things like nanotechnology. I discovered that some of the graduate work I had done was considered nanotechnology at this point. And the bioinformatics are things that I would like to learn a little bit more about myself. I think Tandika has a good point where if you can work and go through maybe a short boot camp or some type of course with a student, it would probably help in some ways, just kind of reopening your eyes to the learning process, because I think that's one of the things we lose sometimes as we're teaching it all the time. We kind of lose that this stuff is exciting, this stuff is interesting, and it's really cutting edge for some of the things that we're learning or teaching about, and we're just, to us it becomes old hat, so to speak, and I think we lose some of that excitement. So I think that's actually a really good idea, is to, have that maybe where you go through a boot camp for a week or something with the student.
Hadn't thought about that. Todd, any ideas?
Yeah, I think bringing some of the entrepreneurial concepts from business into teaching. So, in particular, with our community, a lot of it is driven by getting students through a program, through some coursework, a certificate, what have you, and then into industry, right? And they might come back and continue their education, but there's this real connection. And how do you learn what industry does, and how do you design things? And you could even do it with students, but there's some formalisms that have emerged with startups, like Lean Launchpad, where you do, we call it customer discovery, but you interview a lot of people to figure out, what the gaps are and how your product might fit. You could do the same thing with designing a class or a lab experience or something, and I think everyone would benefit from that kind of concept. And I love the idea of bringing students together with instructors, because I have an intern right now, and we're doing programming on biotech careers, but I'm giving him assignments for things that I don't really know how to do, and so we work on them together. And the good news is I can still stay ahead.
Very cool.
That's kind of gratifying.
Well, I want to thank you all today for joining me, and I just wanted to leave you with one last little piece of information, and Todd's very aware of this. We have something called the Leadership Institute at InnovATE Bio, which is the National Center for Biotechnology Education, and just wanted to let you know that that program is going to start in June. And it is for community college instructors and or teachers. It has its, I guess you could say its pillars come from the Bifp, but it's really a program that's going to be accentuating leadership. And the reason we put this program together is we looked around the colleges across the country, and Todd knows this as well as I do, that what we were seeing with a lot of many of the college programs was actually a graying and also a retiring of really great people. And there seemed to be a bit of a void when they would leave. They take not only their physical presence, but everything that's stored in their wonderful brains. And so, we really felt that there was a need to create a program, but somewhat not duplicating anything that happens with a community college program, because there are fantastic leadership programs. And Tandika, we have one at Foresight Tech. We have a great leadership program. But this is a leadership program that is really based on Bifp principles. It's industry really telling, our people what they need to know going forward as leaders. And so I just want to let you guys know that, let you know that program is very much under construction right now and will be available in the spring. So, I mean, just as a closing comment, Tendik, I know you're kind of interested in that program.
Yes, I've applied already.
Okay, that's great. Great.
Great.
And Patty, does that type of program resonate with you?
What was that?
Does that program kind of resonate with you?
Yes, it does. It does very much so.
Okay. And Todd's helping me with it, so,
Whether I know it or not. That's the conscious and unconscious.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Todd's part of the team. So anyhow, so thanks very much for meeting with me today. I really appreciate it. Gives a lot of good ideas for all of us, right? Really. I mean,
Yeah.
what did you learn from the BIFP experience is that, you also learned that you could actually go out there and get grants, right? So, some of these topics, are discussed purposely with the intent of maybe future intentions, right? So, so thanks very much for joining me today.